Now, what's this headline say? Breaking news: man owned by Israel warns of foreign election meddling. Look at all the election interference that the Chinese are doing.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, Mr. B. Today we have a very exciting show. We are responding to a parody done by yours truly, JP. This gentleman is extremely funny. I just came across his content, and everything he does is extremely accurate at all times. And what he does is he puts a spin on the news, a comedic twist, if you will. And there's a lot of sarcasm there. But in the end, he's actually highlighting the truth behind the comedic spin that he's putting in. And so let's see if you catch on to it. It's been highly entertaining to watch him do a number of different skits. But this one takes the cake. So let's go ahead and jump into it.
Right? President Trump?
Voters' data in 18 states have been bought, stolen, or hacked by China.
If President Trump just came out and warned the country of China's election interference, and here we can see one of the Chinese culprits interfering in our elections, BB Ping. Welcome back to the JP Reacts channel, my freedom-loving friend. This is where we help spread the light of truth and freedom because truth conquers. So recently, President Trump addressed the nation in a speech, and one of the talking points that, the talking point that's getting the most emotion from the country is, of all people, President Trump warning that it's the Chinese that are interfering with our elections. And this headline, this tweet, it says it very well. Breaking news: man owned by Israel warns of election interference. So, how much is he owned by Israel? This is just the dollar figure. There's other ways that Israel asserts ownership, I'm sure. And this is, if you don't recognize the picture, this is the president of the United States. It's a pretty high-ranking position. Donald Trump, president of the United States, he's received $230,473,622 from the pro-Israel group lobbies. In other words, AIPAC. So the president, who's funded by over $230 million from Israel in his campaign to become elected, is warning that it's the Chinese that are interfering in our elections. And I like that. Here you see 331 of 435 members of Congress who have had, Israeli interference in their elections, help them get elected. They are also on the lookout for this Chinese interference. Now, the Chinese interference is the greatest concern. How do we know? Probably because Israel told us, thank God they are our greatest ally, here to help us remain a sovereign nation, maybe a little bit under their control, but more so we're under their control in an independently sovereign kind of way. And in light of this really dire news that the Chinese are interfering in our elections, luckily AIPAC is stepping up even more to help protect their elections that happen in America from this Chinese interference. Breaking: AIPAC has assembled $95 million fund ahead of the 2026 U.S. midterm elections, the largest in its history, aimed at backing candidates who align with its pro-Israel agenda, including support for military aid and closer Washington-Tel Aviv ties. That is great. So AIPAC bringing in $95 million of Israeli interest money. You just cut through the red tape. And what that means is their $95 million is meant to protect America from Chinese interference. And to understand how important President Trump's statement about China interfering in our elections, you don't have to go too far back in time to the Thomas Massie primary election, where AIPAC just stepped in to protect Thomas Massie's primary election from Chinese interference. They put $15 million of funding behind Ed Gallerin. That was for Chinese defenses. $0 of funding behind Thomas Massie. He ended up losing. Why? Because China was trying to interfere and get Thomas Massie elected because he's such a foreign policy kind of guy. But luckily, that was prevented by AIPAC. Now, how big of a threat is the Chinese interference? Well, here you can see this picture in the Oval Office, all this Chinese interference going on. I mean, can you imagine? You have representatives of China standing in the Oval Office, disrespecting America by holding up their Chinese flags. Like, how blatant is this Chinese interference? It's one thing if it's like microscopic data hacking, we can't even see it, but I'll tell you, this Chinese interference, it's not that. It is so blatant, it's in our faces, and finally someone stepped up to say something about it. If you see something, say something. And President Trump saw something, so he finally said something. All this Chinese interference interfering in our national sovereignty. These people holding the Chinese flags, it's not too far-fetched to say they're guilty of treason. The reason why that's not very far-fetched is because they're extremely guilty of treason. And before we see more evidence of this cold, hard Chinese election interference, let's watch the full clip of President Trump in this very important addressing of the nation.
U.S. spy agencies began learning about the compromise of voter registration.
What was the U.S. spy agency that learned this? The CIA that was spoon-fed the intel from Mossad, our greatest ally? Oh, thank you for the intel. That the Chinese are doing this. Hey, we'll get back to the video in a second, but first, it's the middle of summer. We have long days, hot nights, and therefore so many of us are sleeping worse than ever. You're hot, you climb into...
As you can see, JP's making his case here about Trump's latest announcement that the Chinese supposedly have been interfering and meddling with U.S. elections. Now, his point of view seems to be that maybe the Chinese, look like another country that we support heavily. And he, in a very comical way, is pointing out that makes a difference. Again, you're going to choose to believe what you want to believe, but what he's pointing out is the fact that we do support Israel quite a bit, and oftentimes it leads us into conflicts that cost us a lot of money. And the intelligence information that we get doesn't seem to be coming from our own intelligence agencies. They're coming from the Israeli intelligence agencies telling our intelligence agencies what they should highlight. And even when our intelligence agencies say something different than what the Israeli intelligence agencies say, President Trump tends to side with the Israeli intelligence agencies. But for whatever reason, those same agencies want us all to believe that the people meddling and interfering in our elections are the Chinese. Now, that's not to say the Chinese didn't play a part. I definitely do think in 2020, they preferred to have Joe Biden in office and possibly paid Hunter Biden some money. So I don't think Trump is completely off script with that. I'm sure he's got a lot more intel to support that. That is probably factual because there's been some other reporting. I think Tucker Carlson did some reporting that highlighted the fact that one of the guys who was involved in those type of business affairs kind of talked about it. So that's not completely unmerited, but at the scale and the point that's being trying to be highlighted here is that the majority of the election interfering is not happening by the Chinese. It's happening by an ally of ours who thinks that we are to be convinced that their causes should be our causes, their battles should be our battles. And all JP's doing is pointing out that that ally is who they are.
states have been bought, stolen, or hacked by China.
It was kind of annoying in 2016 when the Democrats were just like, hey, this is Russian interference. Proven just BS. Well, what is refreshing is to blame it on China. Why does it need to be blamed on China? Because of this picture right here. This is just evidence that China is interfering in our elections. And people are just coming out in droves supporting President Trump, having the courage, breaking the ties, and telling Americans that China is interfering in our elections. Someone posted this. I hate it when China interferes in our elections. You know what? Me too. I mean, how stupid are we? It's been in our faces all this time. And President Trump finally points it out. Thank God he did it, or else we'd never see it. But it was so blatantly obvious in our faces that China was interfering in our elections. What idiots we are for not having seen this sooner. I forgot how many members of Congress are funded by the Israel interests. 331 of 435. Can you believe we were so stupid? We didn't see China blatantly doing this out in the open before. But I'll tell you, someone who probably did see China interfering in our elections, U.S. Congressman Randy Fine. Here you see him representing U.S. interests. And you know what? He's probably making some phone calls, getting to the bottom of some of these Chinese interferers in our elections. And this is how disgusting China has been in their interference in our elections. They've actually manipulated sitting presidents of the United States to go over and kiss the Great Wall of China. As you can see here, this is President Bill Clinton. This is W. Bush. This is the black guy. And this is President Trump, and you can see the Chinaman by the black guy. But it looks like the same Chinaman by Bill Clinton. Boy, that guy's been around. But finally, this is the president. Probably when he was kissing the Great Wall of China, he woke up out of his trance and said, what am I doing here? Oh my gosh, they've manipulated me. They've been manipulating our elections. This is dangerous for America. I have to put an end to this. And he has. So we'll have no more Chinese interference in our elections. And here you can see our mainstream media and who their support goes to. And you can see it's not China. So these people who help shape largely public influence on who to vote for, who's good, who's bad. Yeah, they're propagandists, but their propaganda is built out of lies you can trust. But you can see these people, none of them are loyal to China. So they're going to be helping protect our elections from foreign interference also. Now, if you thought China's interference in our country starts and stops in elections, you're wrong. Here you can see new Epstein was spying and running a worldwide blackmail operation on behalf of China. Dear God. And can you imagine J.D. Vance just came out on Joe Rogan and said Epstein has ties to Israel? That's because J.D. Vance is guilty of covering up Epstein's connections to the Chinese government. And this is something Wayne Waldrop posted on Twitter. And Wayne, thank you for getting this out there. I mean, we've all been duped by China. Let's wake up to how we've been duped into being controlled by foreign interference from China. Here's what Wayne says. I can't believe China stole nuclear triggers from the United States. China sent mail bombs to President Truman. China had spies acting as art students at the Twin Towers. China attacked the USS Liberty. China bombed Egypt and blamed Muslims in a false flag operation. China pushed back against JFK over nuclear site inspections. China donated over $230 million to Donald Trump in 2024 election. China donates to over 94% of US Congress. China pays conservative influencers to push their Hasbara. I don't speak Chinese. China spent $32 million to primary Thomas Massey. China put out hit pieces against Charlie Kirk for platforming anti-China voices. And China had ties to Jeffrey Epstein. You guys, we found the culprit, and it's China.
There you have it, guys. You get to review this parody and make up your own mind as to who it is that's really kind of influencing our politicians and the decisions that's being made and whether or not we should continue it. So I thought this was extremely funny. Now, this came after Trump made a recent announcement about election interference. Now, this is something that Trump has been passionate about because in 2020, he felt like the election was robbed from him. And there were shady things going on, and Trump hasn't gotten over it. And it seems like now that he's back in office, he has his hands on sensitive information that proves that there was interference. Now, why is he actually saying China is the major interferer? Beats me, and it beats a lot of other people. Because there are people who are getting the sentiment that there's other parties that may be a bit more involved in U.S. politics than the Chinese, and who has an incentive to be involved because we fund and support a lot of their affairs abroad. So JP just comedically relayed the whole irony of the situation for anyone to see and make up their own minds. I thought this was hilarious, so I'm definitely sharing it with my viewers. But what say you? You guys like and subscribe and comment on this particular clip and others. Stay connected and let me know what you think. All right, guys. Thanks again. It's yours truly, Mr. B, signing out. God bless.